Hello, welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're well. A couple of things to talk about this week. Slow start into the new year, obviously. People kind of still getting up to speed with everything. And kind of also a shorter work week for lots of people this week as well. But there's things happening. So the first thing I want to call out is kind of might seem a bit boring maybe, but I think it's quite important, and here's why. It's a survey, and specifically it's from the Microsoft Graph team, and it's a developer survey. So if you're a Microsoft Graph developer, then Microsoft want to hear from you. They'd like to understand kind of the integration experience. They'd like to understand what works and what doesn't, and so they're asking for your feedback. And I think the reason I'm highlighting this is it's very easy sometimes to think of Microsoft as this big kind of massive company. The juggernaut of, adding things and making technological decisions and advancing and maybe not always kind of considering everybody's opinions but actually it's made up of people, and it's made up of teams of people trying to do the right thing, trying to steer products in the right direction and trying to listen to everybody along the way. And this is a great example of that. So Microsoft have provided a survey. They've asked people to fill it out, so I think it's on us to fill it out. As users of this stuff, as developers in this field, I think it's important for us to fill these surveys out and provide and give Microsoft our voice and our opinions. And if we don't do this, then we can't really complain when stuff doesn't go the way we want it, right? So I think it's important to do. There's only 11 questions. It takes like 5 minutes tops. Only 3 of the questions are free text. I hate free text questions. I'd much rather the radio buttons because they're quicker. They don't cause me to think quite so much. So anyway, there's only 3 free text fields, so you can do this. There's 11 questions. It'll take 5 minutes of your time. Go to aka.ms/graph-dev-survey. The link is also, I've done a blog post on it, so you can read the blog post, and the link is in there. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Second thing is another blog post I put out today, and it primarily concerns primary schools in the UK. So primary schools in the UK, that is ages 5 to 11. So that kind of age of children. We have a primary school system, which is kind of mandatory, and then into a secondary education system, and both of those are mandatory up till the age of 16, I think. Anyway, obviously, this last year going to this year has been very difficult and very different for lots of people, including primary schools, who right now, as I record this, are closed and are providing their education provision from home using online learning. And obviously, this has been a massive challenge for everybody. Anyway, there's different ways to do this. There's different ways to offer this. One of those ways is Microsoft Teams. And I think it's important to highlight that Microsoft Teams is free for educational use. It is included in there's an education SKU which includes Microsoft Teams. So Teams is free to use. And actually since April last year, April 2020, the Fast Track team, so that's the team inside Microsoft that can help organizations get up and running quickly with new technology and new training and bring staff on board and all that stuff. They've actually been working with educational institutions to help teachers and staff get on board with Microsoft Teams and understand how to do online learning, how to do education at home. So I think that's a really good thing. Anyway, this blog post is not that. This blog post is about a webinar. And the webinar is actually being run by a primary school. It's Cornerstone C of E Primary School, which I found out today because I posted this link on Facebook. It turns out someone I used to go to school with knows somebody whose child goes there or something like that. So it's a small world. But anyway, they're hosting an event. They're hosting an event about using Teams, about using Office 365 to kind of run their school and run education and do remote learning. So I think that sounds really interesting. I hope it's full of like tips and tricks, things you could do, things they've learned along the way. I think it's not just Microsoft Teams, it's OneNote, it's OneDrive, it's SharePoint, it's Forms, it's all these things that combine together to make an educational experience that a couple of years ago we wouldn't have seen coming. So that sounds really interesting to me. If you do anything in education, this sounds like good for you. If you know anyone who's a primary school teacher, maybe you should send this to them as well. Sounds interesting. Let me share the screen because there's a nice poster for it as well. Here we are. So there's a sign up. There's a forms link you need to fill in if you want to attend. And it's on 2 dates, on February the 4th or February the 5th. There's 2 different times, so that's just less than a month away. And also in the blog post, I found this very cute video of a primary school, some primary school children reading or performing a book over Teams, which I thought was kind of cool. So I put that in there as well. So anyway, that is definitely worth a look. Next up, so I was looking to see what was new in the Microsoft Graph changelog this month, and there's a couple of things, and one caught my eye, and actually that's not what I'm going to talk about, because what the change is quite a low level change to a definition of something, but I went down this rabbit hole of looking through these API calls and found this whole section that I didn't really know existed. Now I've heard about universal print, and we're talking about printers and printing, old school, but the universal print API in Microsoft Graph, and I hadn't really dug into that. But universal print is a sort of technology that allows you to have printers in the cloud, and then you can print to them from the cloud, and that all makes total sense. What I didn't realize is that there's also support for it in Microsoft Graph via an API call, meaning that you can make an API call, literally a post request or put request actually, to get something printed. I think that's really cool. I didn't know that was a thing at all, and it kind of blew my mind when I thought about it, that you can have a physical printer printing physical, like you just make an API call to Graph and have it printing. I think that's amazing. I can think of some cool kind of places where that might be useful and interesting, and also would kind of solve a whole bunch of weird problems around how do you automate printing something, and do you send it to an email and have the email rules to print, because that's a thing we used to do. Anyway, this is really cool. So let me just share my screen again. So this is the page I've linked to. It's this put request, and you literally put print.microsoft.com. In fact, weirdly, I'm not sure this is correct actually. I think this might be a bug, like a typo. Print.print.microsoft.com. I'm not sure if that's true. Maybe it's just print.microsoft.com. Anyway, you put this upload session, and you just sort of put your content in, and you get a response back, and I guess it prints. So that's really cool. I think that's really interesting and different, and it annoys me that I don't immediately have a use for this, because I think it's really nice. Okay, last thing I want to talk about, I'm going to keep it relatively quick this week, because it is the first week back, and like I say, there's not a million things to talk about. So one thing that is worth reading, though, if you're looking for something to read over the weekend, is something from the Scott Hanselman blog, and it's his 2021 Ultimate Developer and Power Users tool list for Windows. He's been doing this a while. So he started doing them in 2003, and the last one he did was 2014. So he's been doing it for over 17 years. And it's his collection of useful applications, utilities, and tools. And everybody will get something out of looking at this. And I'm not saying you have to download and install every single one, but just read through them. And if something chimes, give it a go. It might make your life a little bit easier. That's my other pick for this week, is Scott Hanselman's Ultimate Developer and Power User Tool List. It's huge. It is ginormous. So it's also divided up into different categories. So utilities, dev utilities, useful Windows things, Visual Studio Code extensions, things he enjoys, right? So, that's I think that's useful. It's worth reading and worth checking out and seeing if there's anything that can make your life a little bit easier. All right, I think that's everything from me. Like I say, keeping it short this week. Have a great weekend, whatever it is you're doing. And I'll talk to you again next time.